Hi everyone, Freaky Boy here. Welcome back to Big Picture Tarot. This is an overview of the minor arcana. This structure, this layout I have here is how I have come to learn the the not just the meanings of the cards. Obviously, like I said in the last video, you can learn those anywhere, but how they all connect, how they're laid out, and that this idea came from my own insight and more from three different sources. The first is Rachel Pollack's book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom. In the first part, she lays out the minor arcana into three rows, except the Fool, which is on its own. And the each row represents an experience, and when we talk about the major arcana, I'll get into that more specifically, but it's the idea that every row ends in a card that sums up the experiences. It's the place you get to having gone through everything in that row. And that was really interesting, but like I said before, the minor arcana, when she talks about them, don't get that treatment. And through some other sources I've found, I think that message is still there. And the first source I found for this, which was one of the videos that really inspired me to dive deep into tarot, is from a woman named Jean Fiorini here on YouTube, and I'll link to her videos in the description. She talks about the minor arcana in three rows like this, and then the court cards, and she has this interesting way of talking about it, like, each one kind of leads up to a sort of a sense of completion, a sense of finish, and then moves on to something else that's bigger and broader. So she talks about it like comma, comma, period, and I just love that. So Jean, if you are watching, thank you very much for your videos. They're super helpful. The reason I moved the ace to the top is one, I always had a sense that aces felt very different. I always saw these cards um, as situations almost, but the aces didn't feel like a situation really. It didn't seem like anything was happening, and the art on the cards seemed to suggest that too. But after reading Understanding the Tarot Court, I think it's called, by Mary K. Greer and Tom Little, they discuss that there are four kinds of cards in the tarot. There are the major arcana, which is if you imagine the tarot as a movie, these are the major arcana are the whys. They're the explanations of why everything that the situations we're in, what they're doing for us, why we're in those situations, what we're trying to learn about ourselves. Because remember, this is all about connecting our outer selves and our inner selves into a whole, complete world. The next are the aces, and the aces represent the where. So in what aspect of life? So, um, briefly, air is thought, fire is passion, water is emotion, and pinnacles are the physical, our body, the earth, our work. That's the word I'm trying to think of. Work, right there. In the four brief terms I've heard them in, and this is an oversimplification. So if you haven't learned about the elements, I'm not going to teach you to them in this video. Again, this is overviews. So, of course, I'll go through the numbers. So maybe I should, but we'll get to those when we do each individual suit. Anywho. So those are the where cards. The rest of the pip cards, 2 through 10, are the what cards. What's happening, what's going on, what are we actually seeing playing on the movie screen. And finally, the court cards are the who cards. These are the personalities, the attitudes we see, the people we see in them. And though I digress a little from that view of the court cards in my own studies, I just want to put that out there. So if you want more information, I'll link to that book as well. So that's why I moved the ace up to the top. And you'll notice I have 4 rows here, and I also have 4 court cards. And when I laid out the deck like this, I just decided to stick the court cards along like that because it seemed to match pretty well with them. Only I found out that this was a brilliant move because it gave me immense insight into why the court cards mean what they mean. Like I said, I think in the last video, the aces and the pages both seem to be about like initiation and new things, but and potential. So why are they, why are there 2 different cards for that? And through this, let me explain. Each row of the card, or of the this structure here, is a sentence. The aces always represent, like possibilities of their suit. They're the source of the suit. Imagine all the qualities of the suit being given off, but not yet manifested, not yet realized, not yet fulfilled. Um, this row is more about the basics of the suit, just basic parts of the human experience. Like with cups, it's about making connections. With fire, it's about um, starting out on your path, etc. This next row is about learning about yourself. It's the inner world again. And then this last row is about the outer world and applying what you've learned and learning how to interact with the inner world. But every row builds on the rows before it. So while these are situations, and this is sort of a situation too, but it's more of that awareness, remember. Each court card, I think, reflects its row in that it's learned everything up to and including the last card of the row. So the page simply knows about potential, and in terms of swords here, new thoughts, new these are about new thoughts and thought itself, whereas the page is an attitude of having new thoughts, seeking the new knowledge. So the court cards are the attitudes that come from and through these experiences here up to the end of the row that they're on. So what you'll find then is the pages are very new. The knights are basically skilled, but they're exploring their world. They've got the basics down pat. Now what? The queens will be very good at inner work and a sort of sense of maturity. And the kings will be about uh, the attitude of what it means to interact with the world and make this whatever the suit's qualities are manifest. So I think these explanations match pretty well with standard definitions of the court cards, but this puts it in a way that I can really understand it and look at a card, remember where it is in its sequence, and understand what those attitudes and personalities might be. Again, I'm a big picture guy, so like literally when I pull out like the Queen of Cups, say, I will remember what's in her row. I can see it in my head because it's laid out like this and interrelated, so I can pull the meaning from that. But let me go again to the court cards for a second, in terms of just themselves and not this over here. A lot of people assign elemental meanings to the court cards, so each is an element, the qualities of an element expressed in terms of the actual suit. So the typical order that I found is that pages are earth, knights are air, queens are water, and kings are fire. Now, I don't agree with that order myself, but let me explain what I can see the king being fire for three reasons. One, in terms of if you've ever read Deborah Lipp's books, The Elements of Ritual or The Way of Four, excuse me, she talks about in, I think, Celtic society or pre-Celtic society, or early Europe society, that a lot of the sense of land, sea, and sky and fire, the three realms, the four elements sort of thing, that fire was unique in itself. Fire doesn't have its own world in our manifest reality, and the king is also unique. So that's one reason why I can see the kings being fire, and understand why people do that. Also, I've read that whatever you pair with the queen, like the queen's consort, the queen being water, should be fire. And I get that too. And also, kings were originally shown on horseback. So they were really out there in the world and doing things, and that's a very fiery quality. So that made sense. However, that's not what I use. Instead of earth, air, water, fire, I do air, fire, water, earth. Because to me, initiation, beginnings, new understandings are qualities of air. Air is, beginning, it's dawn, it's birth to me. It's spring. So that same quality is reflected in the court cards themselves, and that's why I've actually chosen the same element to represent what I think they are. So knights then are fiery. They've learned the basics, they're going out and doing things, they're exploring the world because they really want to be a part of it. They're really about that passion, that drive to understand more, to learn more, to participate more. I don't want to use a specific word that's very elementally associated here, so I'm kind of using a bunch. The queens, I totally agree, are water. Everything makes sense about that. They're intuitive. They focus on the inner world, the self. But they're also... I'll get to that in a second. The kings, then, are the outer world, application. So think of them as... I'll get to that later, too. Let me just get to it now. So I'm trying to talk about these also in terms of their roles, of what a page is, what a knight is, what a queen is, what a king is. So think back in the day, the king was the ruler. He inspired his people. He helped his people. He's in charge of his society. And that to me is very earthy, very practical. The queen then, she was in charge of it too, but she was the one giving advice to the king. She was the one looking inward and considering more personal issues. If you think of a very sexist world, as the world has been for too long, the queen then was focused on the feminine qualities that we think of as inner, as yin, as the personal development and emotions and those deeper inner worlds. The knight was about going out and doing shit, So he wanted to explore and show off and be a part of the world, and that to me is fiery. It's about doing things. And then finally, the pages are running around the household learning. They're kind of apprentices. They're helpers. There's a sense of movement. There's a sense of learning, though, and it's that learning that really calls to me and says, hey, I'm an air sign. So so if you think of a page of swords, it is the air of air rather than the earth of air, as some might say. But that's my opinion. If that doesn't work for you, if you find the elemental qualities make sense in different ways, use what works for you. This is your spirituality and your tarot, so take of it what you will. I do want to quickly go through what each of the numbers typically mean to me, because that's another place. I think I said in the last video that there tends to be a crisscross of the numbers and what the numbers mean, but then mixed with the quality of the suit. But there's also that sense of order, and as I told you, these sentences, these step, reflect that order. And actually, I just remembered something I wanted to say before I get into the numbers, and that's hair. The sense of 3 rows and 1 on the outside, especially the outside being the beginning, is actually a reflection of the major arcana organization that I mentioned Rachel Pollack doing. So 1 on the outside and then 3 rows. And I love seeing that reflected and echoed again. I love seeing those patterns. Patterns are deeply meaningful for me. And that's what symbols really are, is patterns we've accepted in ourselves and chosen, and that seem to be expressed in the course of our being. So that, and in the same way that echoes the major arcana too, we have beginnings, the basics of the world, the inner world, and then the outer world, or a sense of, the basics going into the inner world and coming back out into the outer world, and becoming whole, and that's there too. So, excuse me, that's also a theme we're going to see reflected a lot in the tarot. So the numbers, aces. Aces are a oneness. So think of all the potential of the suit. They are the suit whole. They're also, therefore, source and therefore potential. So you hear a lot about the aces being the potential for things or representing the suit itself. That's why, because they are source. They are potential because they have it all in them. It's just not yet made manifest, not yet fulfilled. But they have it all in them, therefore they are the suit themselves. And one thing you'll notice, and this is true of the minor arcana and the major arcana, is that the first card and the last card are always the same. They are the same card, but seen from 2 different angles. So here is all the potential of the source, and here in the 10 is everything that was promised, but it's made manifest, it's fulfilled, it's finished. We've looped back around again, so we see the same themes, but we have a new perspective on them that we've gained through the experience of being, and that is the theme of the tarot as a whole. Again, it's the experience of being. And we see the journey mapped out in these cards, which is why I think the tarot is just a brilliant system. Twos. Twos are about, I have 3 words that I always come to with twos, and that is balance, choice, and duality. And so we'll always see a tension, a choice, trying to keep 2 things steady. That may not always work when you think about the elements. One thing to note is that odd numbers are generally about movement and action and sometimes upset, whereas the even numbers do seem to be a little more stable. So think the outward yang principle of odd numbers, and then the inward yin principle, that calmer place, that more passive place in the even numbers. So the Three of Cups, I'm sorry, I looked at the Three of Cups. Threes are about, they're about completion to me, a basic completion. Now, when I think of threes, I think of cycles like birth, death, rebirth. You have two endpoints and a middle between them, so you're talking about the whole system, and then a sense that you've also completed that whole turn, though. You've gone the whole thing. We see the whole part now. And so you'll generally see something about a big step being made, but it's a sense of it's also a sense of completion, even though that does seem to be more an even card quality. This is a sense of odd of we've moved, we've done something now. The fours then are about stability. When you think of stability, think of the four directions and how that gives a sense of space and purpose. The four walls of a house, an old-fashioned house. Walls have a bit more, or houses have a bit more than four walls these days. And that's that sense of stability. When I first learned that threes were about a sense of I learned that fours, were about stability. I was very confused because I had learned in high school geometry that a stool with three legs is stable, and a stool with four legs is not guaranteed to be stable because any 3 points always make a plane, so they're always in a flat, a plane. So it can sit flat on the ground without being a problem. But that fourth one, by definition, a fourth point does not necessarily fit on the same plane as the other three. And so therefore, if you get it wrong, the stool will wobble. So I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. But when I think of it in, older, more universal terms of the four directions, it makes much more sense about that sense of stability. So in these cards, we'll sometimes see a good place, a place of rest and calm, but sometimes we'll see it upset if the suit is, or the element of the suit is more about moving and shouldn't. So sometimes we'll see a sense of stagnancy, like we're instead of stability, we're stuck. The fives upset that stability, so they're about instability and they're about challenge. So we'll always see a challenge in the five, generally related to what we've learned in the four. The six, I found, is about putting the four and five together. Whatever you've learned, Hono, it's the place where suddenly you come to learn the more mature sense, which is why the queen is follows. I think of the five as being upset because someone is trying to say, I need balanced action in my life, so I need threes, action, balance. So I'm going to throw in a two, and now I've got balance and action, so I have balanced action, but that's silly. So it doesn't quite work, it's immature. And then the six then actually has two sequences, two threes of action, and therefore it's actually balanced action, each balanced by another. So there's a sense of stability and balance, but we're not yet at completion. Sevens, and this is kind of where I'm going to stop talking about the action and balance thing because it just gets complicated. I haven't figured it out yet. Wink, wink. The Seven of Cups, I did it again. Sevens are about moving past that action back into the outer world. So it's a sense of creation. It's a sense of interacting again with the outer world. But it's still coming from a place where we just finished working on ourself. So there's a challenge here, a confusion of trying to relate yourself back to the outer world. The eights are they take that sense of stability of the fours and double it. So I've read through eclectic.net, which I'll also link to. It's a great place to learn the meanings of the cards. Talks about all the eights. Sometimes that limitation could be a sense that's limitation is about focusing, and sometimes it's about excessive constriction, almost a sense of I'm just going to say limitations now, and it'll make more sense when I explain some of the cards in particular. So it'll also be kind of about the Eight of Pentacles here is about hard work. So I'm not gonna explain why that relates to the limitations just yet, or the sense of eightness, but I'm gonna try to do that in the video so I can again show you how I hang all those cards off of the string. Show where their place is and why they are the way they are. The nine represents what I call the high quality of every element. It's kind of a sense of achievement. Achievement is the word I like for this. So each element has what I call a high quality, and I got these high qualities from reading Christopher Penczak's The Outer Temple of Witchcraft. He doesn't call them high qualities, but he mentions that's kind of what it's about. So I said that air was about thought and knowledge, so therefore its high quality is truth. And so that's where we start. The Nine of Swords here is about truth, even though it's also about like anxiety. I'll explain how those two relate because they do. Um, Fire is passion, but ultimately it's about drive and the will. So the high quality of fire is the will. Water is emotion, and its high quality is love, which is the ultimate emotion. Finally, the high quality of earth or work is sovereignty. It's that sense of what it means to own something, to have something, and the sense of manifestation and the sense of almost responsibility for it, appreciation for it. Sovereignty and the words for the pentacles are the things I think I may have the hardest trouble talking about. Um, but I'll do my best when I get there, and the Pentacles do make sense to me. They were actually the first suit I explored like this, just because I didn't get the Pentacles very well, and I couldn't see the differences between some of the cards. And then finally, as I said, we have the Tens. This is the fulfillment of everything promised in the Aces. We get a sense of completion with this Nine, but now we understand it. There's a sense of deeper appreciation. We can look back on the whole journey and see what we learned of the Nine in context. And that's the same thing that happens with the Sixes, is the Six looks at the Four and Five and what we've learned and puts it in context. So that's where the meanings come from. That's how the story develops. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been insightful, even for those of you, who have been doing this for a little while. Maybe it gives you a new way of looking at things and a new avenue of exploration of the tarot. It's not like, I'm pretty sure you could probably study tarot forever and still not learn it all, which is, again, is probably a sign of its really deep wisdom. So, seriously, a lot of thought and years and years and years of just spiritual development must have given themselves to these cards. It's really just impressive. So I'm gonna stop talking now. You might like to not listen to my voice anymore. So thank you very much. I will see you in the next video. Blessed be.